Welcome to The Connector,
where we connect North Carolina to ideas and North Carolinians to each other. This podcast series is from the Institute for Emerging Issues at North Carolina State University.
And now to the conversation.
Hi, I'm Tarik Woods, the Public Policy and Program Manager for the Institute for Emerging Issues. Welcome to The Connector, Episode 2, What's Up? Energy 101 and Preparing Students. I'm joined today by Cassie Gavin, the Director of Policy from the North Carolina Sustainable Energy Association, and Maureen Stover, the Vice President of Policy and Engagement with Best NC. Thank you both for joining me here today.
Happy to be here.
So this episode is going to cover a lot of things, including where we get our energy from and why it's so crucial that we prepare the future workforce. Governor Cooper announced in December that North Carolina had brought about 20,000 clean energy jobs to the state with more than $24 billion in investment. I mean, huge numbers of both workforce development and monetary investment here in North Carolina. So Cassie, I want to ask you the first question. Everybody uses energy. It's on everybody's mind all the time. But can you shine some light for us on the basics of energy? How do we gain access to energy in North Carolina?
Sure. Great question, Tarik. And thank you for having me again. I think, we're definitely thinking about where we get our energy from today. Absolutely. And days like this, hot days, cold days, North Carolina gets everything. So North Carolina has a pretty diverse energy mix. We get our energy from natural gas, from nuclear, from hydroelectricity, from renewable energy, from coal. So all of those generation resources power the plants, power the energy, and then that energy is brought to us through transmission lines, high voltage transmission lines, bring the energy to substations, and then those substations convert the energy to lower voltage, those lower voltage power lines, then bring it to our homes. And something to know about transmission is that you lose a little bit of energy the longer it goes through the transmission lines. So that's kind of a great reason, in addition to many others, for rooftop solar or on-site solar, where we see, there's no need for transmission if you're producing the energy at the location, and that's called distributed energy. And North Carolina has a lot of utility scale solar, some rooftop solar, and hopefully in the future, some offshore wind and more onshore wind.
Absolutely. And that's something that we heard a lot about when we were doing our community focus groups last summer. We heard a lot of those conversations in rural communities that were had a lot of solar farms and were transmitting a lot of the energy that was created there from those rural counties into more urban areas. And they were still losing bits of that power, but so much land was being utilized in rural counties for that. So thank you for shedding some light on that for us. My next question for you is, there's a lot of conversations about energy costs throughout the state. How are energy rates set in North Carolina, and who are the big role players in setting energy rates?
Yeah, so North Carolina has a regulated monopoly utility. That's the primary utility in the state. And they are regulated by the North Carolina Utilities Commission, which is currently made up of 7 commissioners who were appointed by the governor or governors in the past. And soon that'll change to 5 commissioners appointed by both the General Assembly, the governor, and the state treasurer. But those commissioners are in charge of regulating the monopoly to try to get it to a point where it would seem like it's acting like a business that's not a monopoly. That's kind of like the overall goal of the commission, to regulate it so that it benefits customers like they were in an unregulated market. But North Carolina and many states in the Southeast have the regulated market approach. Some states in other parts of the country have deregulated energy markets where there's competition. North Carolina doesn't have that. So the commission is responsible for regulating the utilities, not just energy, but also water and others. And to do that, they're required to comply with statutes. So they have a lot of statutes to comply with that are set by the General Assembly, and they're supposed to set rates that are just and reasonable. And then costs are based on that just and reasonable approach.
Yeah. Can you speak a little bit more about the change in the Utilities Commission? So it went from 7 to 5, and were they on it was a alternating schedule, like the governor was able to appoint one, and that change happened recently, right? Where
Yeah,
they decreased from
so
7 to 5.
Yeah, so the statute was passed recently last year. The change hasn't actually been implemented yet it will go into effect later this year in July 2025. So right now it's still the 7 commissioners, 2 are appointed by the General Assembly, but in July it will go down to 5 commissioners, where there will be 2 appointed by the General Assembly, 2 by the governor, and 1 by the state treasurer.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. My last question for you is, what potential alternative forms of energy do you see as North Carolina having the most potential and positive impact for our state's future?
Yeah, well, you might not be surprised. I work for North Carolina Sustainable Energy Association, so I have a lot of excitement and hope, and I think there's a lot of promise around renewable energy like solar and wind. North Carolina has already seen amazing job benefits and economic benefits that you've mentioned from clean energy. That's been mostly solar in North Carolina so far, but North Carolina has the best capacity for offshore wind of any state in the East Coast. So North Carolina has an offshore wind goal in place, a state goal. And in the most recent carbon plan, integrated resource plan that the Utilities Commission approved, it's looking towards the long lead resource of offshore wind to fulfill some of that high energy need that we're going to see with potential load growth in North Carolina.
That's awesome. Yeah, I saw something from EDP&C. We had a guest on the show last week who mentioned, we have a capacity for 297 gigawatts of potential wind energy in North Carolina, offshore wind energy in North Carolina. And I just thought it's
amazing.
That's insane to even think about. Can you tell me a little bit more about NCSEA and what you do in your role there?
Sure. I'm policy director for North Carolina Sustainable Energy Association. So that means I get to manage an awesome team of lobbyists who work at the General Assembly to try and improve clean energy policy, basically to try to open up the market for clean energy and remove any legal barriers or statutory barriers that may be in place that limit the market unnecessarily for clean energy marketplace, for clean energy businesses. So that, and then we also engage at the North Carolina Utilities Commission as an intervener, and same there, we try to seek to open the marketplace for clean energy, remove any barriers, and make sure that clean energy businesses are getting fair play in the state.
That sounds amazing. Thank you so much for your work. Maureen's been a STEM educator for 3 decades. So if anybody knows how to get students motivated about STEM careers in the STEM field, it's probably you. So my first question for you really focuses on the narrative of a lot of energy jobs. A lot of them are in advanced manufacturing, and we've continued to hear across the state that students today hear manufacturing or hear about some of the energy jobs, energy sector jobs, and they think that's backbreaking or that's going to be dirty, and we just know that that's not true. So in your experience, how do we get this information to students and teachers to kind of change the narrative of what some of these STEM and energy careers are?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think one of the things that's really unique about the teaching career field is that teachers are preparing students for jobs that don't exist yet. And I think, really looking at the energy sector, that's going to be one of these emerging areas where there's going to be a lot of opportunity for students as they exit their pre-K-12 system and head into their post-secondary life to really be able to find something that's a really great fit for them. One of the ways that we can really encourage students to be able to move into some of those jobs that sometimes have traditionally been considered to be a dirty job or to be something that maybe is a back-breaking job is to really prioritize our career and technical education programs. We do have several counties across the state that are really prioritizing some of those jobs. For instance, there are some counties where students can actually engage in an internship where they would be working on a solar panel installation team. They're earning money while they're doing that. They're also getting high school credit, and they're being trained to be able to graduate from high school as a certified solar technician to be able to step into that job immediately. I think it's also really important to encourage our communities to come in and work with our schools. So when you have people who come in, like electricians, solar panel operators, windmill builders, when you have those people who come in and actually talk to your students and share their experiences with them, that really helps motivate the students because now they can actually put some action and they can understand what's happening. They're not just, thinking about this career that maybe they've seen a commercial for or that they've seen on TV, and they don't really have any experience in understanding what that career may look like for them in the future.
Wow, that was really inspiring to hear, that first line, preparing students for jobs and careers that don't exist. And that's really, and you don't even think about it that way a lot of the time. Um, Educators are a core part of students' choice in career paths. So what do educators need? What additional resources do educators need to better inform students on energy careers and the energy workforce, what it could look like in the future?
So educators are always looking for ways to be able to connect the curriculum to their students and make it relevant for the real world. But sometimes that can be really difficult as an educator because we do need the resources and we need the skills built into our educational professionals to be able to share that information with our students. So one of the ways that we have experienced that it works really well is for our teachers to have professional development that actually is going to connect with them, ways that they're able to share those experiences with their students. For instance, in 2018 and 19, I had an opportunity to engage in the North Carolina State University Bioproducts Program, which was a joint collaborative effort between the College of Engineering and the College of Education to bring in teachers from across the state that were in rural areas to learn more about how you can convert biomass into energy. And then the expectation was we would then teach that to our students. So it gave us the technical expertise and understanding how biomass conversion was happening, and then also gave us the materials and the tools that we needed to be able to then share those lessons with our students in class. So for instance, one of the things I was able to do with my kids was we took a styrofoam plate and we made another sustainable plate out of sustainable products. We buried both of them in the courtyard of our school and went back at the end of the semester. The styrofoam plate still looked exactly like it had looked previously. The plate that we made out of sustainable materials had biodegraded. So being able to share things like that with students so that they can actually see it. The other thing that's really important is that we need to make sure that our teachers are fully supported in their professional practice so that they're able to implement those types of lessons with their students with fidelity. So we know that many of our teachers are trying to do so many things. They have a lot of paperwork, they're trying to grade, they're trying to lesson plan, they have to contact parents, they have to differentiate instruction. There's a lot of things that teachers are doing on a daily basis in addition to instructing kids. And most of that work tends to happen after the school day because that's the only time that you can really fit it in. Right. One of the things that we've seen that's been really proactive in helping teachers be able to have the time to be able to do all the lessons that they want to do while also managing all the extra pieces of being a teacher is to fully support teachers in their professional practice by switching from the one classroom, one teacher model into a model that's a team teaching model, where you have a lead teacher that helps set everything up, helps support the teachers by mentor teaching, by doing model teaching, co-teaching, relieving the classroom teacher from some of those daily duties that they typically would have done if they were a single teacher in a single classroom, and really elevating the opportunity for those teachers to engage with students in a way that's meaningful both for the students and for the teacher.
Wow. Thank you so much for telling me all of that. And I think one thing that I noticed from your first answer and the second one was the need for partnerships. You started talking about partnering schools and communities, partnering industry and communities, and now even your last point, partnering teachers with teachers is just so important to preparing students for their future careers in any sector, it sounds like, but especially when it comes to STEM careers. A lot of those careers that we don't know exist yet, or so even the ones we have today, don't require 4-year degrees. In North Carolina, what do districts need to better display all the different pathways for entry into STEM careers and energy careers? So often we hear everyone wants to go and be an engineer to get into the energy workforce, but there's so many different ways that they could open the door and get into these careers without a 4-year degree. So what do districts need?
So there's a lot of research that indicates that having career technical education that begins in middle school is critical, and really probably that begins in elementary school. A lot of students are already making those career choices before they're entering high school, and so really starting with the career technical education in middle school is going to be very beneficial to helping students find a career that aligns really well with what their lifetime goals are, and elementary school is even better. But those programs are expensive. Bringing in the industry experts who can teach those courses, connecting with community colleges to ensure that students are able to be enrolled in coursework that will align with what they're required to do for their high school requirements for graduation, while also giving the experience that they need to graduate credentialed. So it's expensive to do that. So there really does need to be prioritized funding for our career and technical education to ensure that districts have the ability to actually offer those programs to their students. And early is better. There's also a really incredible report that came out from Jobs for the Future, which is looking at what's called the big blur, which is kind of a blur between 12th grade and community K-14, to ensure that students are graduating from public education with the credentials they need to go into those highly specialized jobs. We also look at My Future NC with their goal for the 2030 to have the credentialed workforce in North Carolina, knowing that North Carolina is someplace that business and industry is moving to because it is such an awesome state. And really looking at the opportunities to leverage some of those programs and some of those goals through funding through the General Assembly to ensure that we do have the funding in place to offer to our 1.5 million kids in our North Carolina public schools every opportunity that they need to seize their post-secondary life.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Maureen, will you tell us a little bit more about Best NC and what you do there?
Yeah, Best NC represents the business community and success and transformation of public education. And really looking at what are some of the solutions that exist that we can learn from the business industry and really pull those into the North Carolina public schools to improve the experience both for our students and their teachers.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And now for the really tough question. What do you think is the most pressing energy challenge in North Carolina?
I think the most pressing energy challenge is helping people understand why it is so important that we transition to sustainable energy sources, really prioritizing what does it mean for life cycle analysis? What does it mean if we continue using carbon at the rate that we have been? Why is it so important that the global temperature does not rise to the point where the ice caps begin to melt? So I think that's a effort that needs to happen both in our local public schools, but also partnering with our communities and industry partners to really help everyone understand why the transition to sustainable energy is so critical.
Thank you so much.
All right, thanks for that question, Tarik. It's a great question, and I think it's very important. The next 20 years will be super important for transitioning to clean energy and to meet our carbon emission reduction goals that are set in state statute. So to me, the biggest challenge is really going to be keeping up that political will and keeping on the path that we are on now to meet those goals that are set in law and to not backslide. We have the technology, we have the people who want to work in the clean energy sector, we have the jobs. North Carolina is doing great and growing clean energy sector, growing clean energy jobs. So just maintaining the path that we're on now, not losing that political will. And like Maureen mentioned, education is a big part of that. So education, not just at the school level, but education of our leaders as well. So keeping on that track.
Absolutely. Thank you both so much for joining us here on The Connector. Please go to emergingissues.org to learn more about the 2025 Emerging Issues Forum on Future Forward Energy. And until next time, let's all stay connected.
This has been a presentation from the Institute for Emerging Issues at North Carolina State University. To learn more, please visit us at emergingissues.org.